back into that Sean podcast. It is I, the Big Ush. It is he, that cat daddy. We are running on fumes, people, but we are still here for you. Gonna make this thing work. So, we are continuing our division review of the draft. Cat daddy, what's on your mind?
The rookie minicamps have begun, and we get to discuss more draft classes. This is a beautiful day.
Who's started today?
I know Green Bay for sure. Green Bay started. I don't care about anybody else. All I know is Green Bay started.
Speaking of Green Bay, we are starting with the NFC North. But we're not starting with Green Bay. We are going to start with the Detroit Lions. And in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions selected home. I don't know if he's really from there. I didn't look that part up. Maybe you can look that up while I'm going through this. But out of the University of Michigan, edge rusher Aiden Hutchinson. Then they traded up from 32 to go take a wide receiver out of Alabama, Jameson Williams. Then in the second round, they decided to go get another defensive lineman out of Kentucky, Joshua Pascal. In the third round, they went and picked a safety out of Illinois, name of Kirby Joseph. Then in the fifth round, they took tight end James Mitchell out of Virginia Tech. In the sixth round, they took linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez out of Oklahoma State. And then James Houston, edge out of Jackson State. And in the seventh round, took a flyer on a cornerback, Chase Lucas out of Arizona State. Any thoughts on this draft, Mr. Cat Daddy?
All right, before I get to my thoughts, Aiden Hutchinson was born and raised in Michigan, so yes, we can call him
hometown
a
boy.
Kid. Yep.
Bet he's happy.
It's not very often, if ever, that a player hopes he's not the number one draft pick and instead wants to be picked by the Detroit Lions. I don't think I've ever seen it happen before, but that's the way it happened for Aiden Hutchinson.
Did you know 4 times, I believe in this first round, a player went to basically the same, like the college is in the same state as the team that picked them.
No, I didn't even pay attention to that 4. Well, Hutchinson was one of them.
One of them we'll be talking about next in the next episode.
All right. But Aiden Hutchinson slips past the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it sounds like the NFL wasn't too happy with how quickly Detroit made their selection for Aiden Hutchinson. Because they were really hoping he would fall to them. And it's not like they did anything wrong or anything bad, but they were just so over-enthusiastic. They turned that card in pretty much as quickly as possible. And the problem the NFL had was they didn't allow the broadcast team enough time to talk about the number one selection, Trayvon Walker, before Detroit was turning their card in for Hutchinson. So match made in heaven right there. The Lions moved up from 32 to 12 to select Jameson Williams, which I thought was a brilliant move because it gave up very little when you're thinking about it to move up 20 spots in the first round. Put in context, most of the times when you're moving up in the first round, 20 selections, 10 selections, you have to give up a future first rounder to go with that. But Detroit didn't give up any future first rounders. They gave up their second rounders. They even got a second rounder in return from Minnesota. So to say that Detroit fleeced Minnesota, I think it's pretty accurate. Yeah. I like their day 2 picks with Pascal and Kirby Joseph. Pascal is going to be a good fit for that defense. And I think Joseph was a forced pick considering how quickly safeties were coming off the board, but it wasn't the
I still like the pick.
Yeah, absolutely. And the day 3 picks add upside and depth to the roster. With the quarterbacks falling and sliding as much as they did, I'm surprised Detroit didn't take a shot at quarterback. It must mean Detroit likes Jared Goff and thinks he could be good, or they like the potential of a franchise quarterback coming out next year in the 2023 draft. But either way, this was a masterclass by Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. It was a good follow-up to last year's class.
I really like the draft the draft haul. Yeah, I know. Starting with Hutchinson, I think Hutchinson is a very nice pick. He's in that range of some of these edge rushers that we've seen come out, and to risk being assaulted by one of our Ohio State buddies. He's kind of in the mold of the Bosa brothers, isn't he?
There's some similarities. I don't think he's on that level, at least not yet, but there's some similarities there.
Jameson Williams is going to be a nice fit because you already have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who broke out, and this guy brings a different type of skill set. This is going to be a nice pair of wide receivers here. Like I said, I like Joshua Pascal. I like Kirby Joseph. James Mitchell could be a nice developmental player there. Malcolm Rodriguez is a good pick, if not just for special teams. This team's going to be very interesting. I think it's more question mark. Let's see what we have with Jared Goff. If it doesn't work out, there's some quarterbacks next year that we like.
Yeah.
Because, unlike some of these other teams, Jared Goff has shown to been able to play in this league. All right. Next up, I'm going to introduce him, but I'm going to not do too much talking afterwards. Because next up, we have the Green Bay Packers.
We gotta do our favorites and least favorite pick.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm off today.
He's excited to talk about the Packers. I get it.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Anyways, what is your favorite pick from this draft?
For Detroit, my favorite pick was James Mitchell, tight end in the 5th round. First, I love the value of this pick, and getting him and his talents in the 5th round was really good selection. And second, if Detroit has any concerns about retaining TJ Hawkinson on a long-term deal, if there's any concerns there, this pick becomes better because he could ultimately become your starting tight end if for some reason you can't retain Hawkinson.
All right, so low-hanging fruit, I'm going to take it. I'm sorry. It is next to never where you get a guy who's from a state, who went to school in a state, who's going to play pro for the pro team in said state. Aiden Hutchinson is my favorite pick for this thing, for this draft class, or this draft haul. I'm sorry, you know as well as I do, I've been speaking this into existence for the longest time, and it has happened, and I'm very happy. Now, my least favorite pick from this draft, even though I like the player, it is Kirby Joseph. He is the player that you probably could consider kind of a reach. I still like the fit. I still like the player. It's a very good draft. This is the guy where I'd say it's getting a little iffy.
Yeah, my least favorite pick was Josh Pascal in the 2nd round. I like the player. I like the spot. I'm just not a fan of taking edge in round 1 and then following it up in round 2 with another edge player. And I get you don't.
Style.
I know you don't pass on Hutchinson for other prospects, but maybe you pass on Pascal considering that you already drafted Hutchinson.
Or maybe not.
But it's not that he's a bad player. It's just the strategy of taking edge back-to-back rounds.
You just don't want him rushing Green Bay.
I would have preferred if you were in green and gold, but we'll talk about them next.
All right, so we got Green Bay up. First pick, with the 22nd pick overall, They take linebacker, Georgia, Quay Walker. Then, just a few picks later, they take his teammate, Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle, Georgia. Then, in the second round, they take legacy wide receiver, Christian Watson, out of North Dakota State. Then in the third round, they get Sean Ryan, offensive tackle, guard tackle, offensive lineman, UCLA. Then in the fourth round, they get wide receiver, Romeo Doubs, out of Nevada. Then in that same round, just a few picks later, they get Zach Tom, offensive lineman, Wake Forest. Then the fifth round, they get edge rusher, Kingsley and Mbari, out of South Carolina. Then the seventh round, they get Tariq Carpenter, safety, Georgia Tech, Jonathan Ford, defensive tackle, Miami, Rasheed Walker, offensive tackle, Penn State, and Samori, Toure?
I think Toure. But we'll find out soon.
Wide receiver, Nebraska. Hey, that was a good attempt. I suck at names. We know
Just
this.
say it with confidence.
So, Cat Daddy, the floor is yours.
This is by far my favorite Brian Gutekunst draft class. And I also felt it was the most complete from top to bottom. Now, admittedly, I overreacted in the first rounds. And I overreacted because I was studying the past drafts of the Packers, what Brian Gutekunst was looking for. And I was trying to predict, based on trends, based on preferences, how this draft would go for Green Bay. And I was trying to get as close as possible. So when we see Brian Gutekunst just buck the tradition, right? He normally selects young prospects, 21, 22 years old, very athletic, but he focuses on the premium positions during round one. And I didn't think an off-ball linebacker, as good as Quay Walker is and will be, was that premium position, since you just signed Devondre Campbell to that contract, let alone him being the first linebacker off the board. I didn't expect that. Nor did I expect them to take a defensive tackle who's on the older side with their second pick in the first round. But Gutekunst just shows that drafting is an art and not a science. So he definitely threw me for a loop, and he was hoping, I'm sure he was hoping for a wide receiver to be available early, 22 or 28. But it turns out that the top 6 wide receivers on his board were all selected between picks 8 and 18. So he stacked defensive talent in the first round, which allowed them to crush the offensive talent later on. And Green Bay Twitter almost fell apart after the first night of the draft when Green Bay had left round one with 0 offensive players, specifically a wide receiver. But they knew they wanted Christian Watson, and they traded up in that second round very early with Minnesota to make sure they got Christian Watson. Again. Well, this one, Minnesota actually came out ahead. They got picks 53 and 59. All Green Bay got was 34. So if you're looking at that traditional trade value chart, Minnesota actually won that trade. And I'm okay with that because you're getting the wide receiver you want for anybody else, which is really important for this team. And you're trading within the division. So I thought Minnesota actually got a good deal on this one. I don't mind Green Bay losing this. And Christian Watson was just destined to become a Packer. And later on, they selected Romeo Doubs in the 4th round, which I thought was a really good spot. Both Watson and Doubs will eventually crack the wide receiver rotation, but until that happens, they can both contribute on special teams.
Eventually?
Watson, well...
Who's ahead of him?
You still have Sammy Watkins, you have Alan Lazard, you have Randall Cobb, you have Amari Rodgers. You still got some veterans. You gotta make the rookies earn it.
Alan Lazar is not keeping Christian Watkins off the field. Maybe not even Romeo Dubs.
But there's that veteran presence, so they got to work their way in. They got to earn it. But
Aaron, get
until
to know
that
your new
happens,
players.
I know, right? But until that happens, you can have Watson
Including Sammy
returning
Watkins.
kickoffs. You can have Romeo Dubs returning punts. So they're going to get some early reps on special teams for sure. And I love the selections they made with the offensive line with Sean Ryan and Zach Tom. I thought those two were great picks because they're going to add depth and make the line stronger.
Let's talk about your favorite pick.
You want me to jump to my favorite pick?
Go ahead and jump to your favorite pick.
All right. My favorite pick for this whole draft was Kingsley Enagbare in the 5th round.
I knew.
You already knew it. You knew. With Zadarius Smith signing with Minnesota in the offseason, I was really surprised that the Packers passed on Jermaine Johnson early in the 1st round in favor of Quay Walker. But Enagbare was an edge prospect I was pretty high on for most, if not all, of the draft cycle. I mean, starting back with before the season began, and I absolutely love the value of the 5th round, and I can see him cracking that defensive line rotation sooner rather than later. Overall, it was an excellent draft for me. The only thing lacking was a tight end. But with the way the tight ends were falling, it's like they were getting picked and plucked several spots right before the Packers. So all the tight end talent was coming off the board, but I'm very happy with this draft.
At the same time, I mean, Dubs can play that tight end role.
I don't know if I'd have him playing tight ends.
The way Green Bay likes their tight ends, I think Romeo's big enough, and he's got some blocking chops to him. I'm just saying.
And I'm hoping that Green Bay thinks Robert Tonyan can come back sooner than later, which is why they didn't see the urgency of moving up or taking a tight end early. That's my hope.
Now, that being said, you put it out there. I like this draft haul. I like Quay Walker more than most. Now, note, he's still, I know not my final, but he's still like my 5th linebacker. Now, note, that being said, Christian Harris, as an overall linebacker, Quay Walker's better. I just think at his particular role, Christian Harris was a better player at his particular role. But I think Quay Walker as an overall linebacker is a better linebacker. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But Quay Walker's he's right there behind Damone Clark for me. So, and I had my list went Devin Lloyd, Nakobe Dean, Christian Harris, just because, then Damone Clark, then Quay Walker. So I like the pick. Now Devontae Wyatt, say what you want to say, he's 24, but if you can get 5 dang good years out of this player, get 5 dang good years out of this player. Then there's the offensive line picks. They're day 7. I mean, most of those guys are making the team. But we're going to jump right to it. Who are your favorite picks? Who are your least favorite?
Well, my favorite was Kingsley Enagbare. So who's your favorite? I already went for mine.
My favorite pick, I'm sorry, I'm a sucker for a good story. So it's the legacy. Now, his father was a 6th round pick for the Packers. I don't care. He made the team. Christian Watson, legacy here. I like it. I like to see it. Step up, young man. Step up. You got Aaron Rodgers right there. Make him your best friend. Now, note, if I wanted to pick one other than him, it would be Zach Tom. I think there's a path for Zach Tom to be actually starting in his first year on this team.
Yeah, you're thinking you're just an injury away from Sean Ryan and or Zach Tom getting into that starting lineup. I'm really excited about those two.
All right, your least favorite pick.
Least favorite, Rasheed Walker, 7th round. I think
Rasheed Walker.
I think he struggled with consistency while he was at Penn State, which
That's why
kept
he's a
him
seventh
from.
round pick.
I know, which kept him from putting it all together. Now, I like the value of him in the 7th round, but in one of our college episodes, I know I mentioned that Rasheed Walker is a guy that I could see going back to Penn State, going back to college for another year. But getting him in the 7th round, I think there's a lot of upside there, and
Maybe
there's
if you could even
very
get him
low
on your
risk.
practice squad.
Yep.
Practice squad's probably better than him going back to Penn State.
Well, if he stays with the Packers, then yeah, I'll agree with that.
All right, my least favorite pick, and it's not because I don't like the player, but it's Romeo Doubs. I struggle with him. I don't like receivers that have like next to no speed. I'm sorry. Like, it bothers me. Maybe he'll be something. Maybe he's got better game speed and functional speed than straight line speed. We'll have to wait and see. And I'm sure Aaron Rodgers can get some functionality out of him. I got problems there.
He'll be a good route runner. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to find a good way to use him once he gets into that lineup. So,
all right, next up,
I like it.
We got the Minnesota Vikings. And in the first round, they took Lewis Cine, safety, out of Georgia. Then the second round, Andrew Booth, cornerback, out of Clemson. Same round, Ed Ingram, offensive guard, out of LSU. Third round, Brian Asamoah, linebacker, out of Oklahoma. Then in the fourth round, oh crap, a Caleb Evans, corner, out of Missouri. Good Lord, Minnesota. Why are you doing this to me? In the fifth round, we have Ezzy Tomio, defensive lineman, Minnesota. I know I butchered that name. And also in the fifth round, Ty Chandler, running back, North Carolina. Good Lord, come on, man. In the sixth round, Vidarian Lowe, offensive tackle, Illinois. Then Jalen Naylor, wide receiver, Michigan. And Nick Muse in the seventh round, tight end, South Carolina. All right, Cat Dave, what do you think of this class that I can't pronounce a single one of these names? Good Lord.
We see trades with Detroit, allowing them to select Jamison Williams in the first. Then he traded with Green Bay, allowing them to select Christian Watson in the second. And I get that they wanted to move back. They wanted to acquire additional picks, but you're giving two divisional rivals legit wide receiver threats. And that, I think, is a very bold strategy. But I guess it makes a lot of sense why their first two selections were spent on the secondary. You have Lewis Cine in the first, Andrew Booth in the second, because they're going to need all the help that they get. While I think Cine is a good talent. Cine was a good talent, but you're thinking they could have stayed at 12 and they could have selected Kyle Hamilton.
They could have.
They could have, but they got additional picks, so you got to give them credit for that.
If in all fairness, there's some people who thought Lewis Cine was a better prospect than Kyle Hamilton. It just the eye of the beholder.
It depends on what you want your safety to do, or your safety linebacker hybrid. What do you want them to do?
They're pretty much the same position. Let's be honest. This is that new hybrid.
They both like to hit. Yeah.
When do you, all right? I know not to sidetrack us, because we're going to get long in this episode anyway. But when do you think the NFL is going to catch up? Because this style of player has slowly been inching its way ever since Cam Chancellor. When do you think the NFL is going to be like, okay, this is something we value, and these guys start getting paid?
I'm surprised it hasn't happened already. Look what the transition happened with tight ends and how they're used more as a big slot receiver,
Right.
and less of an inline blocker. And in
that's
that
why
transition,
this player has been coming around.
yeah, you got to be able to defend those bigger, faster tight ends, and this position can do it.
But not just them. You need to be able to defend the Mike Evans, the newly drafted Drake Londons, the Treylon Burks, the A.J. Browns.
Yeah, and then you still have to be able to go after the running back, too. You have to be quick enough to get after those running backs. Yeah.
And also, but there's the whole thing is, what would you rather put on the field? Would you rather put on the field a, let's say, 230 to 250 pound linebacker who runs, let's say, a 4.6, 4.7? Or would you rather put on the field a 220 to 235 pound safety who runs a 4.4, 4.5? Right.
That's a good question.
All right, but back to the class.
Back to the class.
Because they took a linebacker too.
Yeah, I think the round 2 selections were good. Ed Ingram to the offensive line, Brian Asamoah to the linebacking unit. And then the third day was just filling depth on the roster with some upside. Nothing terribly exciting for me.
I don't know. I like Ty Chandler putting there. Ty Chandler, I think, could come in, and next year in particular, he's a future pick because, Matheson is going to be gone. They're not going to pay Matheson when they've got, what is my guy's name? I forgot my name. Dalvin Cook there. Yeah, so Ty Chandler is going to be that nice player to take some pressure off of Dalvin. Jalen Naylor, I love that pick. I really do.
That was a good one.
Some of the other ones, the guy in Minnesota whose name I can't pronounce, I'm sorry. I'm not attempting that again. But I do like the corner out of Missouri. We know where the steal of this draft is, and if I may start into it, my favorite pick of their whole draft is Andrew Booth. To get him in the second round, injuries aside, woo! You know how I felt about Andrew Booth.
It's good value for him.
He's still my number 3 corner.
My favorite pick of the draft for the Vikings was Ed Ingram in the second round. I expect Ingram to win one of the starting guard jobs right away. I don't expect him to have much competition for it. And that's going to be really good for Dalvin Cook because he's going to be really good in the run blocking game. And it's going to be generally pretty good for Kirk Cousins too.
My least favorite pick? I'm sorry. I ain't going to pronounce his name again. It's the defensive lineman out of Minnesota. I'm sorry. There's only one lineman out of Minnesota I'm selecting. And it wasn't his name. It was Boye Mafe. Come on. Yours.
You have Ty Chandler in the 5th round. You have Dalvin Cook. You have Alexander Madison. You drafted the running back from Iowa State last season. And I know it's a different regime, but they may feel differently about their backup running backs.
Hey,
you could have
Ty
gotten
Chandler
another
can
one.
Fly though.
He
they
can.
don't have
He's
that
quick.
Speed back.
Well, I thought the kid from Iowa State last year was pretty quick. He was returning kicks for him.
Chandler can fly. All right, next up, we have that infamous Chicago Bears draft. So, Chicago did not have a first-round pick because of the Justin Fields trade. So, in the second round, the Bears go Kyler Gordon out of Washington, cornerback. Then safety, Jaquan Brisker out of Penn State. Then wide receiver, Velus Jones Jr. out of Tennessee. Then the 5th round, Braxton Jones, offensive tackle, Southern Utah State. Then also in the 5th round, Dominique Robinson, edge, out of Miami of Ohio. 6th round, Zach Thomas, offensive guard, San Diego State. Then it's Tristan Ebner, Running back out of Baylor, Doug Kramer. Doug Kramer sounds like a Chicago Bears player.
Well, he did go to University of Illinois. So.
Illinois. And then in the 7th round, Tyree Carter. Come on, man. Offensive guard out of Southern. Southern what?
Southern. He's just Southern.
Then Elijah Hicks, DB. This guy didn't get a position. It's just straight up DB. Out of Cal. And then Trenton Gill, punter. North Carolina State. Oh, one for the punters. That's the pick that tied for the most punters picked in the draft. They didn't break the record. They tied the record.
And it looks like Southern is located in Louisiana, in case you were wondering.
I was. So
Louisiana.
This draft, like I said on one of our other episodes, in the vacuum, those 2 first picks are freaking spectacular. The Dominique Robinson pick, I love. These offensive linemen late, they could be cool. If you have a guy who can develop them, why are you just taking linemen late when you need linemen early? No clue. Jones, the wide receiver, very polished guy. Coming into the league, very polished. But like you said, he should be. The problem is, as much as I like this draft, I hate it for the Bears. Because again, when we talk about team building, here's the thing. The Packers went 2 defensive players with their 2 first picks because the Packers already have an infrastructure in place. They have a quarterback that's well seasoned into basically the best quarterback in the league. Yes, I said it out loud, and I'll say it again, and I'm not trying to inflate Cat Daddy's ego here. Not Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the league. I said it, and that's what it is. That being said, their offensive line is very good. Their running back, Stable, is also very good. They also already have some receivers that are kind of like they signed Sammy Watkins. They have Alan Lazard. They have Amani Rodgers ready to go. The Bears have Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet.
Byron Pringle.
Who?
Exactly.
And then, their offensive line is a complete mess. And you think late round picks plugged into the offensive line is going to do anything to couple with late round picks like Larry Borum? Get the F out of here. See, they almost made me cuss. Take over. Take over.
Do you remember how excited the Chicago fan base was when the Bears moved up and drafted Justin Fields in the first round last year?
I was excited.
So was I. I wonder how excited that fan base is now after seeing the Bears prioritize the defense instead of giving Justin Fields any weapons or any protection. Now, saying, yeah.
This is what I'm saying, though. I like Kyler Gordon as a player.
Mm-hmm.
But this is right after the Packers move up to get Christian Watson. There are a plethora of players. There's Sky Moore. And then there's John Mechie. Who else went? You got Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce could have easily complimented Darnell Mooney. And then in the 3rd round, you don't have to take Velus Jones Jr. Instead, you can take one of the plethora of offensive linemen there, like an Abraham Lucas.
Went right after, yeah. Yeah, in a vacuum, I like the picks of Gordon. I like the pick of Brisker to strengthen their secondary. I like him, but it's a vacuum. You're playing in a division with Aaron Rodgers. I think they should have done
score points.
a better job to build around Fields when they selected Brisker, Pickens, Alec Pierce, Sky Moore were all on the board.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. Which receiver do you like more? Velus Jones Jr. or
Anybody
Jalen
else?
Tolbert?
Right. When they selected Jones Jr., Tolbert was on the board still. David Bell was on the board still.
Tolbert
I would have
didn't
gotten
go until
Tolbert's.
88. They selected Jones Jr. at 71.
Yeah, exactly.
What
There was. I
on
thought
here?
there was better wide receiver talent on the board that they could have taken. Jones.
They could even have went this route. Imagine Jalen Tolbert. I would have not have poo-pooed this draft as much if they had Jalen Tolbert here. I'm glad they didn't take him. Bring him to the Cowboys, but imagine Jalen Tolbert with Darnell Mooney now.
That would be a much better duo. You're thinking Jones is going to end up being your deep threat, your slot receiver, and he's going to contribute on special teams. But I felt taking him at
That's what Darnell
71
Mooney is.
was a huge reach, and it wasn't enough. So not only was it a reach, it just wasn't enough.
But my issue more so is not getting offensive line.
Exactly. They finally addressed offensive line on day 3 by selecting 4. But similar to the early defensive selections, I like the players' picks in a vacuum. But when you consider how Justin Fields looked last year and how he fared out there with that current offensive line, and
Hold up. You keep talking.
okay, when you consider how Justin Fields did last year and all the pressure he faced, and now you're thinking the offensive line is changing philosophy to get lighter, to get more athletic, I think 4 offensive lineman selections on day 3 just fall short. There were several good offensive linemen available when they selected Jones in the 3rd, and granted, I'm not sure if they would fit the Bears' new philosophy. But ultimately, I think this draft is going to come back and haunt Ryan Poles and the Bears.
It will. I think it will.
They just didn't do enough to build the offense, and they keep saying we're all in on Justin Fields. We're going to surround him with talent, and I want to question
BS.
what their Well, they didn't specify what talent they want to surround him with, so technically, it's still a true statement. So, I wouldn't be inspired if I were a Bears fan right now.
All right, time for our favorite pick out of this draft. What's your favorite pick?
Dominique Robinson, 5th round. As we were nearing the end of the 5th round, he was a player I was hoping would fall to the Packers and that they'd be able to draft him, but Chicago got him. I think it was 5 selections before we could. Chicago, just don't expect Khalil Mack numbers out of him, at least not right away.
All right.
He's drafting the 5th round for a reason.
Unfortunately, it's Zach Thomas, offensive guard out of San Diego State. He is an offensive lineman that they... Braxton Jones, offensive tackle, Southern Utah State.
Yeah.
He is an offensive lineman that they took, and I will gladly praise an offensive lineman taken here. Unfortunately, I'm going to say their first pick, who is going to be a good player. I'm going to specify that. He is going to be a good player. Kyler Gordon is going to be a good player, but I hate him for the Bears because their draft tiering is all jacked up here. This is the classic example of BPA gone wrong.
Who's your least favorite pick?
I said Kyler Gordon.
Oh, that was Gordon? All right. So I'm going to go Jones, right? You want to draft him on the 3rd day? Fine. You want to draft him in the 3rd round while there's still better talent available at wide receiver, offensive line, practically anywhere else? Horrible.
Indeed. Agreed. All right, to wrap this up real quick, let's rank these draft classes. I am going with the Lions first. I think they knocked it out of the park. I think that they've been doing a very good job. We'll see if the team, Dan Campbell, can put it together. Next up, I have the Green Bay Packers. You know something, Cat Daddy? Maybe there's some rhyme or reason to what they're doing. Stop poo-pooing them. Then, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. Really like what they did early on. Really like what they did later on. Okay with what they did in the middle. And we already know what I think about the number 4 class, the Bears. I ain't getting into that.
Well, I share the same order. It's Detroit, I thought, knocked out of the park again. Green Bay came in with a solid top-to-bottom draft. Minnesota falls in third. Somebody needs to tell Kawisi not to trade as much with division foes. And then the Bears did a Bears thing, even though it's new management.
Bears going Bears.
Yeah.
All right. That's all she wrote for this episode.
Not yet. How do you prioritize these teams after the draft now? What would your power ranking for the North look like?
I'm jacked up these days. All right. Come on now. Green Bay Packers is number 1. Minnesota's still number 2. But wait! The Detroit Lions jump to number 3. And the Chicago Bears way down in the cellar.
Yeah, I've got the same order. Green Bay runs the division. Minnesota, with the added secondary help, is going to fight a little bit more. And then is between 3 and 4. And I think this draft is going to help push Detroit overall into that 3rd spot, because Dan Campbell's going to coach them up. They're going to take some kneecaps. And then the Bears. Yep. Okay. Yep, we're done.
All right. That's all she wrote. People at the Cat Daddy, Instagram and Twitter.
Especially Bears fans.